Hey, welcome back to Gaffy's Grinds. In this video, we're going to be learning about the heart, what it does, how it works, and what its structures are. Now, for many years, scientists and doctors didn't really know that much about the heart and about blood. They had ideas which seem kind of funny to us now. So one of the ideas that they had was that the lungs, their job is for cooling down the body. So they used to cool down the blood, and that would keep your body warm. And then the heart used to keep us warm. So it used to warm up the blood and keep your body warm. So that was responsible for keeping your body temperature the same. Now we know that that's not true now, and it seems kind of silly, but unfortunately, that's the ideas that they had at the time. And it took a scientist called William Harvey, who was the first person to kind of figure out that the heart, what it does is it pumps blood. So it pushes blood around the body through all these network of blood vessels that we learned about. So between arteries, veins, and capillaries. So the the heart is responsible for pushing that blood around the body. So William Harvey was his name. Now, it's not that important that you don't need to remember his name. I'm just giving you some background information here. And it's important to remember that the heart is quite complicated. Okay, I'm going to try and keep it as simple as we can. Now, you may have seen a diagram like this before. So something like this may look familiar. Now, don't mind these things. These are just labels. And we are going to come back to that diagram later on. But for now, we're going to try and keep it as simple as we can while we're trying to learn about how the heart works. So I think that diagram is too complicated right now. So we're going to try and do it a little bit more simply. Okay, so what do I mean by simple? Well, we can think of the heart kind of like a big box. Now, I just told you that this is only a model. This isn't really what the heart looks like, but it's useful for us to understand what the heart does. So remember, it's not a box, but it's useful. Okay, so this here is our box. And what we know then is that blood is pumped in at the top. So blood goes in at the top. It then gets squeezed by the muscles of the heart and gets pushed back out the top in a different place. So blood goes in one place at the top and blood gets pushed out the top and at a different place. Now that's the simple idea of what the heart does. Blood goes in, gets pushed out to pump. Now, if we look a bit closer, we can actually see that the heart is split into two halves. It's got two sides. So here I'm going to draw a line down the middle like this, as straight as I can, which kind of splits the heart into two halves. Now, for us to really understand how this actually works and how we should name which side is left, which side is right, I need you guys to have a look at this here for me. Now, this here is a little bit different. Make sure you're looking at me here up in the corner of the screen. So here I have drawn what's on the screen here. But this is the way you have to imagine the heart when you're thinking about what's left and what's right. You have to imagine that it's in your body. So you hold up the diagram to your body, and then you think about which is my left and which is my right hand. That's how you would label this. Now, it looks different when we look at the heart, because to me, this side here looks like it's on the right. You have to remember that you label it as if it's your heart. Now, if that doesn't make any sense to you, what I want you to do is I want you to draw out this on a piece, pause the video, draw this out on a piece of paper, hold it up to your body, and then see that this side here is your left, and this side here is your right. So if you write down here, left and right, and then when you turn it round, what you'll actually find is that you label it correctly. This side here is the left, this side here is the right. Okay, so that's how we label the left-hand side and the right-hand side of the heart. You label it as if it's yours. Now, this here is what we call a mirror image. Okay, so when we look at it, it looks the opposite of what we've written because it's a mirror image. You have to pretend you're looking at it in someone else's body, or you're looking at it, holding it up in your body. Okay, so that's the best way to do it. And if I got this question in an exam, I wasn't sure, I would literally hold the exam paper up and go, okay, well, that's my left and that's my right. So, and I would label them while I hold it up to my own body. Okay, so as you see, the line down the middle splits it into the left and into the right. Now, how does it work? Well, let's start with the left-hand side. Okay, let's start with the left-hand side. Blood comes in at the top of the heart. Now, I'm going to use an eraser to make a little gap where the blood comes in. It comes in just over here near the corner. So here is a red arrow showing blood coming in to the left-hand side of the heart, and it gets pumped out of the left-hand side of the heart closer to the middle. So it gets pumped out here like that. So blood comes in and then gets pumped out. Now, you remember how we started with one box and we split it down the middle and we turned it into two boxes. Well, in fact, the heart is actually divided into four spaces, four what we call chambers. So I'm going to draw another line to show us this. So I'm going to split here like that. Okay, so you'll notice now I kind of have four boxes, and each box is called a chamber. It's like a little space for blood, and there's a gap for blood to flow. So again, here I'm going to make a little gap where the blood comes in at the top left hand side and gets pushed down here through to the bottom left hand side. Okay, so it's pushed through into the bottom bit. And now what happens is the blood gets pushed through here. Now this here, what I'm drawing here is I'm drawing a tube. So blood gets pushed out of the heart through this tube. Now we know what tubes are called that carry blood. They're called blood vessels. Okay, so this here is a blood vessel in the heart that carries the blood out of the heart. So start again. Blood comes in at the top left-hand side, gets pushed down into the bottom left-hand chamber, and then gets pumped out through this blood vessel. Where does it go when it leaves the heart? Well, where it goes is it gets pumped all the different parts or different organs of the body. Okay, so an example here might be the blood gets pumped to the liver. It goes in another tube as well, though, goes to the intestines, the digestive system. It also goes to the organs of the reproductive system, penis, vagina, and so on, that we've learned about before. Now, what I want you to get here is that it doesn't just go one place, it goes everywhere. So it goes to the body. This is what we call to the body. It goes to all the cells and all the tissues in the body. So as the blood passes through these areas, then the liver, the intestines, the reproductive system, the brain, all the other places, it passes by all the cells. Okay, now it does this in capillaries. It flows through all these little capillaries, those tiny little blood vessels, past all the cells of these organs. And as it does this, what it does is it passes away, it gives off its oxygen. So it passes oxygen to the cells. That's what it does. Okay, it gives away its oxygen. Now, those cells do respiration, which produces carbon dioxide, and that needs to be taken away. So every time they get oxygen, they also have some carbon dioxide that they need to put back into the blood. So carbon dioxide goes into the blood. So now what we've done, the blood has now lost its oxygen and got too much carbon dioxide. So what it needs to do is it needs to go and pick up some more oxygen and let off this carbon dioxide. Where does this happen? On 3, speak your answer to the screen. 1, 2, 3. I'm hoping that you said the lungs. More oxygen goes into the blood in the lungs. So how does it get there? Well, unfortunately, it cannot go straight there. The reason for this is as after the blood has moved through all of these organs, it is now moving very, very slow. It's going to need an extra push to push it to the lungs so it can collect more oxygen. So to get that extra push, it goes back into the heart, but it does this on the other side. So this blood, after it goes through the part of the body, comes back up and goes back into the heart. Now, of course, all the other blood from the other parts collects in the same way, and it all flows, it all flows back to the heart together. So now we're back on the other side of the heart. We're making a little gap where the blood flows in. So here is an opening again, or a tube, a blood vessel that carries the blood into the heart on the other side. Just like before, there's an opening. The blood then gets pushed from the top into the bottom chamber, like this. And then it gets pushed out of the heart through a different blood vessel. So here we're opening up a different blood vessel. Now notice this is another tube. It's not the same as the first one that we drew. It's a separate tube. And the blood gets pushed out of here. Squeezed out. Now where is it going? Well, we told you what needs to happen. It needs to get more oxygen. So this is going to go to the lungs. Okay, so it's pushed up here and to the lungs. So here it's going to the lungs. Okay, sorry, I'm gonna have to pause the video here. Sorry, my screen keeps failing on me there for some reason. Okay, so the blood gets pumped from the right-hand side of the heart and it's going around past the lungs. So here it goes through the lungs. As it goes through the lungs, it is getting more oxygen. So oxygen moves from the lungs into the blood. So it's now increased the amount of oxygen it has again, and it's getting rid of that waste. So that waste that was picked up from the cells in the body, the carbon dioxide goes to the lungs. The blood is kind of refreshed, if you like, now. It's got lots of oxygen and lots of carbon dioxide again. It's ready to go around the body again. Now, it can't just keep flowing here because, again, it's now moving slowly. After it's gone through the lungs, it's moved through the lungs in capillaries, through little blood vessels, and that slowed it down quite a lot. So it needs to get a pump again before it goes around the body. So what it does is it goes back in here through the left-hand side, blood in, and it starts again. So it goes in through the left, down into the bottom chamber and gets pushed out to the body again. So this here is what we call a double socket. Okay, double socket. What that means is it gets pushed around two separate sockets, if you like. One of them is this body socket, so to the body. Okay, to the body. And one of them is to the lungs. Those are two separate pushes. Okay, so two separate pushes. We go through it one more time quickly before we do some practice questions. So we'll start up here again. Here we're at the left-hand side of the heart. Blood goes in. In at the top left, it gets pushed into the bottom chamber on the left, and then it gets another push out through this blood vessel. Now, we're not naming any of these parts yet. I just want you to understand how it works. After it gets pushed out of the heart on the left-hand side, it goes out and to the body. Now, at this stage, there's a lot of oxygen in the blood. There's not a lot of carbon dioxide. And then as it passes through all the different organs and different systems in the body, so for example, the liver, the intestines, the reproductive system, it gives up its oxygen to the cells of these organs. So it lets go of its oxygen. The cells use it for respiration. They are producing carbon dioxide, which means that has to pass into the blood. So we now have blood low in oxygen, high in carbon dioxide. It needs to change that around. It needs to get more oxygen, let go of carbon dioxide again. So it needs to go to the lungs. Now to do that, it has to get another push. So it goes back up to the heart, in the other side, in through this right top chamber here, gets pushed into the bottom chamber, and then it gets pushed out through this blood vessel up to the lungs, where it gets more oxygen and loses its carbon dioxide. Goes back to the left and starts again and again and again around like that. All right, guys, so that's the big picture of what the heart does and I suppose the directions that it follows. Okay, we haven't introduced any tough or difficult names of different parts of the heart yet. That's for later. I want you to understand what it does and how it works first. All right, so at this stage, what we're going to do is we are going to have a go at some of these questions for me. Okay, so this is to check that we understand and that we're all following. It's very important that you do these, otherwise you're not going to know whether you know them or not. So what I want you to do is 29 to 34 there. I want you to pause the video and I want you to have a go at them for me now, please. Very quick feedback here. All right, so it says which letter shows the right side and which letter shows the left side. Hopefully here you said that A was the right side and B was the left side. A bit counterintuitive. How do you know? Well, this is a mirror image. You have to hold it up to your own chest to see which is which. Okay, so how do you know there? This diagram is a mirror image. It's the opposite of what, how you label it. So that's how you know. In our box model of the heart, each small part is called a chamber. How many chambers are there in the heart? Hopefully you said 4. There are 4 little boxes. Blood flows into the heart, in and out of the heart through tubes. What do we call these tubes? That would be blood vessels. And then I think I said 33, so I'm going to give you 33 here. When blood leaves side B of the heart, where does it go? Again, I'm hoping here that you said it goes to the body. So that's the body socket when it leaves B. All right, so well done if you got all them right. What I'm going to get you to do now is I'm going to get you to pause the video. I'm going to get you to do 34 to 39 for me. So do 34 to 39, then pause the video and then play the video. Sorry. All right, so let's look at the next one. Student says when blood leaves B, it carries oxygen and holds onto it until the blood enters part A. Explain why this is wrong. Okay, so hopefully you read the statement and you saw why it was wrong. This is wrong because blood does not hold on to the oxygen until it enters part A. Instead, it releases its oxygen or gives its oxygen to the different parts of the body. So hopefully you said something like that, talking about it gives its oxygen to the cells and the different parts of the body. So it has not much oxygen by the time it gets to part A. When blood enters A, is it higher or lower in oxygen than when it enters B? Higher or lower? So A compared to B, A is lower. So hopefully you said lower. How do you know? Well, the reason why we know is because it's just been to the body and it's given up all its oxygen. So again, hopefully you're talking about that. So it's lower when it goes in A than when it goes in B because it's just passed its oxygen to all the cells in the body. When blood enters A, is it higher or lower in carbon dioxide than when it enters B? So hopefully you saw the difference. If you didn't know the difference here, pause the video and do 37, 38 now. Okay, so we're just talking about carbon dioxide here. So for 37, hopefully you said that it would be higher in A than B. How do you know? Well, it's just picked up or it's just got extra carbon dioxide from being in the body. So as it passed through the body, it gained oxygen. It's not yet gone to the lungs to dump off that carbon dioxide yet. Sorry, I said that wrong. As it goes through the body, it picks up carbon dioxide from the cells as a waste, and it hasn't yet been to the lungs when it gets to A. So after A, then it dumps the carbon dioxide. 38, 39. All right, sorry, that's 37, 38. Let's look at 39. In the diagram below, from which chamber does the blood get pumped out to the lungs? Okay, so hopefully you read that bit, out to the lungs. So there's two chambers where it gets pumped out, B and D. But in which one is it going to the lungs? So have another think about that if you didn't think carefully about it. Pause the video now. Okay, the correct answer here is B. So only B. Well done if you said B. What happens to the blood as it passes through the lungs? You should have said that the blood gains oxygen and loses carbon dioxide. Okay, so it gets extra oxygen and it loses carbon dioxide. A student says when blood goes through the lungs, it flows directly around to the cells of the body, delivering oxygen. Explain why this is wrong. Okay, so this is wrong because it first has to get pumped. So it has to go back to the heart to get pumped around the body first. 42, plasma carries carbon dioxide. Where does the blood collect carbon dioxide from? The cells of the body. Okay, so that's what we're saying there. Well done if you got all that right. Okay, so what we're now going to do is we're going to show you how to label the different parts of the heart. So we've got the blank diagram again. It's a bit tidier now, hopefully. And we're going to talk about how we label the different parts. So we told you before that there are 4 chambers. Okay, we split it into the left and the right. First of all, we know which is the left and which is the right. That's going to be important. But now we need to know the names of the top and the bottom chambers. So here we have what we'll call the top chambers. So this here is a top chamber, or these 2 chambers on top. These chambers are called the atria, or one atrium, 2 atria. Okay, so atrium, atria, that's singular and plural, atria. Put them on here, atria. And the bottom chambers are called ventricles. So obviously this language is hard. That's why we waited until you understood how the heart worked to put the names on. So now we need to put the right and the left together to help us name these 4 chambers. So to name these 4 chambers, this here is the left atrium. Left atrium. And this here then has to be the right atrium. So you see how we put the left and the right together with the names of the chambers to make the names of the chambers. All right, so this here then is got to be the left ventricle. Left ventricle. And this here is the right ventricle. Right, these labels are going to be very important for you all the way up to Leaving Cert if you do Leaving Cert biology. Nothing changes there. This is the proper name that you will be used all the way up to when you do medicine. If you went to do medicine, you would still use these names of the different parts of the heart. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of that now. Okay, we've got the left and the right atrium. Okay, and I'm just going to get you guys to just have a study now and really take those words in for me. Okay, so what I want you to do is, without looking or without studying or without looking at anything that you've written down or going back in the video, trying your best now to label these 4 labels A, B, C, and D. Okay, so pause the video and label A, B, C, and D now for me. Pause the video, do that now. Okay, so hopefully you've said that A is the right atrium. So A is right atrium, right atrium. And that means that B is the right ventricle. Now, if you said the left, then that means that you're mixing up your left and right of your heart. And you've got to remember, you've got to think of it as your heart. Okay, you've got to think of it as your heart. So this is the right ventricle. C and D then, those should be easy. So if you weren't able to do the first 2, what I want you to do is pause the video now and finish C and D if you didn't get the first 2 right. You should definitely be able to get these 2 right now. Pause the video, do that now. Okay, so what you should have done is said that C is the left atrium because it's on top, on the left, and D is the left ventricle. So that is how we label the different parts of the heart. Okay, what we're now going to do is going to show you how to label the different blood vessels in the heart, the different tubes. Okay, so we're going to go back over to this diagram again, and we're going to think about the tubes that are here. Okay, so I'm just going to extend these up a little bit actually to show the different tubes. Okay, now, so we're going to take the whole thing again. We know the left atrium, left ventricle, right atrium, right ventricle. We know where they are. So now we're going to start the system, the blood flow again system, including the names of these chambers and including the names of the blood vessels. So here we go. We say that blood enters the left atrium. So we're starting over here again. You can start anywhere when you're talking about the heart, really, because it doesn't really have a start and a finish. Because it goes around and around, you can start anywhere. I'm just choosing to start here. Okay. Now, this is a blood vessel that's carrying blood into the heart, to the heart. So when we have blood vessels carrying blood to the heart, that means that there are veins, V-E-I-N-S. Now, we learned about veins the other day. Is one of our blood vessels. So now we can kind of put a definition on veins that we didn't really, I avoided this the other day because when we hadn't talked about the heart, it didn't make sense. But veins are blood vessels which carry blood towards the heart. Okay, so this here is a vein. Okay, and we'll talk about what vein actually is in a couple of minutes. Okay, but just know that it's a vein. We're going to go over the other side as well. I'm going to say, okay, this is also a blood vessel that carries blood into the heart. So you notice that the blood comes into the heart on the edges at both sides. So this is also a blood vessel that's carrying blood to the heart. So what I want you to do is pause the video and tell me, is this an artery or a vein? Pause the video, do that now. Okay, so it's just speaking your answer. You should have said that this is a vein. Now, this vein here has a funny name. It means hollow vein, okay? And it's hollow vein in Latin. So the name of this blood vessel here is called the vena cava. Vena cava means hollow vein. And that's because it's a big vein, really hollow in the middle. It's got a big gap. This is the biggest vein in the body, and it carries blood into the heart, into the right atrium. So blood going into the right atrium is called the vena cava. So blood, we then know, goes into the right atrium and is then pushed into the right ventricle, where it then turns around and gets pushed out of the heart. And where is it going? In this case, it's going to the lungs. Now, here we see that blood here in this blood vessel is going away from the heart. So we say blood going away from the heart in this blood vessel here. When blood is getting pumped away from the heart, it's always in an artery. Okay, so away means artery. So away from heart, artery. And I often remember A for away. Sorry, A for away, A for artery. So they both begin with the letter A. I don't know how helpful that is. Some people find those kind of things helpful. If you try and remember the actual how it works, I think it's easier to remember which ones are veins and which ones are arteries. Yeah, so this is an artery. Now, this here is what we call the lung circuit, or another word for lung is this word here. You'll often hear doctors saying this when they're talking about your lungs, pulmonary. Pulmonary. Okay, so pulmonary means to do with the lungs. So this is an artery that's carrying blood to the pulmonary socket, or to the lungs, to the pulmonary area. And that gives this artery here the name pulmonary artery. Pulmonary artery. Pulmonary because it's to do with the lungs, and artery because it's carrying blood away from the heart. We learn then what happens is the blood goes through the lungs, it collects the oxygen, and then it comes back, and that's where it goes back in the heart over here when we started. Now, because that was the pulmonary artery going towards the lungs, then this now is the pulmonary, because it's still to do with the lungs, it's coming from the lungs, but it's going to the heart. So this is the pulmonary, pulmonary vein. There's something quite unusual about the pulmonary artery and the pulmonary vein, in that arteries normally carry blood high in oxygen. Okay, so all other arteries, as they carry blood away from the heart, always carry blood high in oxygen. But the pulmonary artery is carrying blood that's low in oxygen. It's just been around the body and it's just picked up. It's just lost all its oxygen. So this is the one artery that doesn't have a high amount of oxygen or a high concentration of oxygen. Veins are the opposite. They normally carry the blood that's low in oxygen. So for example, the vena cava here is carrying blood that's coming back from the body and has barely any oxygen in it. So the general rule is that veins carry blood that's low in oxygen, but an exception to that is the pulmonary vein, because it's just been to the lungs. So this is the one vein where the blood in it will have lots of oxygen. So those are exceptions to the general rule about what the blood is like in those blood vessels. Pulmonary vein, only vein where blood has a lot of oxygen, and pulmonary artery, only artery where blood has a lack of oxygen, if you like. All right, so we've one blood vessel left. We know that the blood comes into the left atrium through the pulmonary vein. It then gets pushed down into the left ventricle, and the left ventricle squeezes and pushes the blood out through this blood vessel here. Again, this here is carrying blood away from the heart, so it's an artery. Here is an artery. And just like we had the vena cava, it was a big vein with a special name, this here is a big artery with a special name. It's the biggest artery in the body. Okay, and again, if this ever got broken or something busted, you would bleed out very, very quickly because it's so big, it's carrying a lot of blood. The name of this blood vessel is the aorta. Aorta. Now, because this diagram is quite messy, I'm going to clarify the names underneath again. Okay, so the names of our blood vessel are the vena cava. Okay, the clue here is it's a vein, vena. Okay, the second one is the pulmonary artery. Pulmonary artery. And just to highlight here, pulmonary means lung, artery means away. Okay, we then have the pulmonary vein. Again, pulmonary means lung and vein means towards the heart. And lastly, we have aorta. Aorta means big artery. Biggest artery in the body. Okay, so back up to the diagram again and look at the flow of blood through the heart again, thinking about the blood vessels, where they are along the top, because you're going to have to label these in a second. Okay, so we have vena cava. We have vena cava here. So I'm just going to highlight vena cava here in green. We have pulmonary artery here in blue. We have aorta here in pink. We have pulmonary vein here in orange. Okay, now I know that gets quite complicated, and unfortunately there isn't really much of an easier way to teach this other than to go through it step by step. So I'm hoping that you guys are able to follow me. I'm trying to do it as step by step as I can. So at this stage, what I'm going to do is we're going to look at some of these questions. So first of all, I want you to try question 44. It says complete the sentences about the direction of the blood flow. So what direction do arteries carry blood and what direction do veins carry blood? Now you should be talking about relative to the heart in these sentences. So what I want you to do is pause the video and do question 44 for me. Do that now, please. Okay, so you'll only be playing if you've done 44. It should read something like this. Arteries carry blood away from the heart. Okay, so keyword there, away from the heart. Veins carry blood towards the heart or to the heart. Okay, very important that we have those directions right. Right, number 45 then is about other things we've learned about the blood and how they flow. So what I want you to do is I want you to pause the video and complete the sentences now in 45 for me, please. Okay, so here it's talking about the concentration of oxygen in blood, in arteries. So in the first one, it should say blood in arteries usually has a, so remember where the blood is in arteries. The blood is in arteries when it's in the body system down here. Okay, so this is an artery, leaves in arteries, flows around the body. So would this be high or low concentration as it's flowing? Okay, so what we should be doing is, what you should have said there is has a high concentration of oxygen. This is in all of them except the pulmonary artery. So that means that blood in veins usually has a low concentration of oxygen, except the pulmonary vein. This is the only one where it's high. Blood in arteries has a high pressure. It's just been pumped by the heart, so it's under pressure, whereas blood in veins, it was a long time since it was pumped. So in veins, it's lower in pressure. Okay, so hopefully all of that is making sense. At this stage, what we're going to do is we're going to get to 46, and we're going to label the 4 blood vessels. Trying our best to do this from memory. You see I've labeled them 1, 2, 3, and 4. So what I want you to do is pause the video now and write down the names of the blood vessels. Do that now. Okay, so hopefully here you said 1 was the vena cava. The vena cava, a vein, of course. And blood's going into the heart there. Blood's going out through number 2. And it's going to the lungs. So this is the pulmonary artery. Number 3, this is going out of the heart. So it's an artery again. It's going to the body this time. And it goes in the aorta. Well done, if you said that. And now number 4, this is blood coming into the heart. And it's just been in the lungs. It's back in the heart now. So this is the pulmonary vein. Pulmonary vein. At this stage as well, what I want to say is that this little wall that separates the heart, this wall here, separates the heart. It's called the because it separates the septum. The septum. So in a second, I'm going to ask you to draw your model of the heart. And I want you to include all of the parts and include the septum. The septum is the wall that divides the heart into the left and the right. Okay, so what I'm going to get you to do now is put away everything you've written down so far. Get a blank page for me. And on that blank page, you're going to draw the box model of the heart, just like I have. And you are going to label it as fully as you can, please. Pause the video and do that now. Okay, so you should only be playing if you've completely labeled this from memory in as much detail as you can. I told you I wanted you to include the septum, so I'm going to put that on first. There's the septum. Okay. And what I hope you've done then is label each of the 4 blood vessels and each of the 4 chambers. Okay, so if you haven't done that, 4 blood vessels, 4 chambers, pause the video, do that now. Okay, so let's label them. This here is the vena cava. You should have the full name written. This one here is the pulmonary artery. This one here is the aorta. Again, you should have the full name. I'm just shortening it down for correction's sake. And this one here is the pulmonary vein. Okay, here then, this one here is this is the left hand side. Remember, this is the left and this is the right. So this here should be the left atrium. And that makes this the right atrium. Well done, if you got all of this right. That means that this here is the right ventricle. This here is the left ventricle. All right, so what we want to do now is we want to see, this is jumping all over the shop today. We want to see how this links to a more accurate model of the heart. So here, I want you to study this diagram and I want you to try and pick out the different blood vessels and the different chambers. Okay, So you'll see here that I've labeled, this doesn't really very clearly look, this should be B. It doesn't look very clear. So what I'm going to get you to do is try and study this diagram and relate our box model to this one. Now, obviously our box model is a bit better than this one, okay? But what I want you to do is I want you to try and link our box model to this here and find out what the labels are. So pausing the video and doing this now. Okay, so first of all, if you couldn't do this or you weren't sure what was what, I'm going to show you where the chambers are. C is a chamber, D is a chamber, H is a chamber, and G and F is a chamber. Okay, so now that I've showed you the 4 chambers, you should be able to label them. Now let's look at the blood vessels. B is a blood vessel, and look at the direction of the arrow. A is a blood vessel, and again, look where it comes from and to. G is a blood vessel, and where's the other one? E is a blood vessel. Okay, so pause the video now and go through them. All right, so what you should have done is labeled them all. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to go through them very quickly here. So let's start with A. Okay, A is a blood vessel that leaves the left ventricle. Here, look, blood goes out through A, out to the body. This here, A is the aorta. Hopefully you said that. Well done if you got that right. Okay, so if you got that right, then that gives me confidence that you're able to link our simple box model to this model, and that was the point of it. Okay, that was A. B is a blood vessel where blood comes in to the top left-hand chamber of the heart. This is the vena cava. I know it's a vein because the blood's going in. It's going into the top right-hand side, sorry, of the heart. C is the top right-hand side chamber. So this is the right atrium, which means that D is the right ventricle. If you got this right, that's superb work. Well done. Over to E. E is a blood vessel. It's a tube where blood has left the right ventricle. It's going to the lungs. So E is the pulmonary artery, going away from the heart to the lungs. F is the top left-hand chamber. So it is the left atrium. G is a blood vessel bringing blood into the left atrium. It's the pulmonary vein. That makes H the left ventricle. Tricky, tough, and if you got that right, well done. Skipping by this stuff now, and what I want you to do is, in as much detail as possible, complete this diagram to show the route of blood through the body. Okay, so here we're starting at the vena cava. I'm going to start here. Okay, where does the blood go after the vena cava? Okay, so blood goes into the right atrium. Okay, after the right atrium, it gets pushed into the right ventricle. Then what blood vessel does it go through to go to the lungs? What blood vessel? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get you to pause the video. I've started this for you, and I want you don't need to draw the boxes, but draw out the map that shows the flow of blood through what blood vessels and what parts of the body. So I want you to pause the video and finish this now, please. Okay, so hopefully you've said vena cava goes to the right atrium, then to the right ventricle, and then gets pushed out through the pulmonary artery. Well done if you said that. To the lungs. From the lungs, then it goes into the pulmonary vein. And it goes back to the heart where it enters the left atrium. It then gets pushed into the left ventricle, where it gets pushed out of the heart through the blood vessel, aorta. Then it goes to the body. Then it comes back in the vena cava to the right atrium, and it goes around and around. If you completed that, well done, doing a good job. And that's us finished on the heart for now, guys. I appreciate that that's probably a complicated topic, but it's a really important one. It's probably likely enough to come up on the exam, But more than that, it's a foundational idea in biology that if you do biology in 5th year, that you really need to have a good grasp of what the heart is and how it works. All right, guys, I hope you found this video helpful, and I'll see you in the next one.